Welcome back to this breakout session about innovation and leadership. And I have three guests here. You've seen them before this afternoon: Stijn Nijhuis, Patrick George, and Vicky Bunyard here. Talking about leadership, I think it was extremely interesting what we discussed in the previous session about leadership, because we're not only talking about huge technological shifts and changes and innovations, but everybody's talking also about a different kind of management, leadership, and there comes creativity and real leadership in the sense that giving people direction where to go. Let's talk a little bit about leadership. Starting with you, Vicky. How do you look at this shift in at least the thinking about leadership? And then we can talk about whether managers are ready to make this shift, but talk a little bit about the need for another type of leadership in this day and age of Corona and hopefully soon post-Corona.
Yeah, and I think I talked about this fairly recently in terms of the difference, this move away from perhaps dictatorial and potentially slightly destructive ways of leading towards much more empathetic and ethical, a much more ethical focus on leadership, and really thinking about leadership as being empowering your people and helping your people to be the best that they can possibly be, and allowing them to really then understand, what is my role in that, and what's my leadership role in that, so that it's not a single manager anymore. It's a whole group of people who are empowered to do the best that they can do and to think for themselves a little bit. And probably some of this comes a little bit out of the agile thinking that started to drive this kind of change. But I really think it's leadership today is much more about setting a direction and helping everybody to go in that direction, and helping everybody to find their place and find their niche and bring their skills and bring their values, for you to all go in a direction together, rather than driving that, rather than dragging that, and building that environment where people can really and I hesitate to use the expression, but bring their best game and do their best work and feel that they are part of something, not just being paid to do something. I think it's and you really see that transition, and I think particularly now where we are all stuck at home and we are all having to do the work remotely, and we are much more in control ourselves of what we do every day. I think in that context, it's even more important, because you need to trust people.
And how do you look at the younger generation? I mean, when I look at my children, they're in their late 20s, two work in the US, one in Sweden. When I look at these kids, they inspire me because they're my kids and I love them dearly, but also because, it's so fascinating to listen to them and to think about the way they look at work and what their work approach is and their ideals and the way they look at, it's not like when I grew up, my dad worked for the same company his whole life. That's unthinkable in this day and age. Does the young generation scare you, inspire you? Where are you on this line?
Oh my goodness. Absolutely inspire me. And so we have the most amazing people in that kind of age group inside my organization who come with ideas and come with thoughts and come with different ways of looking at things. And sometimes you kind of sit there and you go, just wow, I never thought of it like that. And that's what drives innovation. You don't get innovation from a whole bunch of people sitting there being the same. You get innovation from a whole bunch of people who are different.
Innovation doesn't happen in the corner office.
Exactly. So no, the more ideas and the more ideas that come from a diverse and various group of people, that's what excites me, and that's how we get to that's how I get to amazing technology. That's what drives technological innovation.
But IBM is an established company. It has been around, I wouldn't say forever, for a long time compared to your company, right? Talk a little bit about this younger generation and the perspective for a different kind of leadership. Will the young generation change leadership style? For
I
example?
think, well, a lot has been said about the younger generation in saying, yeah, I think they're looking for something more than just showing up for work, making a lot of money, or making someone really rich. I think that's fine. They're looking for a sense of belonging, realizing a value and impact on society. Maybe not all of them wants to change the world, but the story behind the company is far more important, the purpose, as we say it. And I think in an environment now where basically if you're a talented young individual, you can work for any company in the world without having to relocate. That means everybody's fishing for talent worldwide.
Because you told me a story about Silicon Valley companies recruiting here in Holland, hiring kids here, young people, and say, well, you don't have to move here. I mean, just stay where you are, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's so
Well,
fascinating.
Spotify recently announced that they would hire worldwide. Basically, you never have to come to the office, and they will pay you a Silicon Valley salary. Well, in such an environment, you have to, as an organization,
And as an employer, I mean, that's
Yeah,
stiff
exactly.
competition in the hiring
I
market.
welcome it, but it's you need to up your game.
What about you?
You need to be, I mean, different thoughts about that. I guess
Okay.
for me, empathy is very important when you come back on the leadership question, the style, because even in the same culture, all individuals have different expectation, different way to be reassured, different way to be motivated. So try to have a kind of one-to-one empathic approach with your people. Some of them need a lot of guidance, some of them prefer a lot of freedom, and all of that. And if you multiply that by the different type of culture you may find on this planet, I guess that's a very complex stuff. So the second part was about this last point. I'm working remotely for the last 10 years, and I used to work for an Asian-based company where there was a wherever you are doesn't make sense. I mean, doesn't have any importance. But then you realize that in terms of attrition, the people who are remotely tends to change company more often than the people located to an office.
So it's harder to keep them employed,
But it's
harder to keep
difficult
them
if-
within the company.
To rebound on your example, I mean, if you hired by a company that you never went to, you never go to the any central office or any other colleague than the one you meet in video, I guess the feeling of being part of the story is probably, at least for people like me, more difficult to get. So that just, I guess, flexibility is super important. For example, today, if you have no kids at school, I mean, you can work on your holiday flats whenever you want. You know, just a plane ticket and you go in Spain, you go in France, you go somewhere else.
My kids travel everywhere and keep working.
Yes.
I mean, they go on an RV trip for a month, go to New Orleans for a little bit, go skiing in Switzerland for 3 weeks, and still, do you have vacation days? No, I'm working, Dad. Isn't it interesting?
So that's that there. So I guess, again, like everything, you need to find the right balance between the total flexibility and then how to create a feeling of being part of a family.
Yeah.
You know, that's I guess that's important.
What's the perspective if you combine this need for new leadership and the technological shift we've been talking about quite a bit this afternoon? Because this comes together. You would expect, with changes like this, you need firm leadership. And we're basically talking, and correct me when I use the wrong term, we're talking about the need for soft leadership. Isn't that right?
Well, I
Stijn?
think most of the companies had a culture in their companies, and they never really knew exactly what it was. You know it's there when you don't have it, when you're working
Wasn't
remotely. All of a
explicit.
sudden, it wasn't explicit, and this forces you to articulate what's the deeper meaning behind my company? What's our purpose? What binds us together? What's our culture? And those companies who have spent less time articulating that I think, have a harder time now to bind people more long term. And I think it's something at Enreach we've always tried to emphasize, and now even more so, to look at, okay, it would be great if we could meet up in person, but the next best thing is to have a strong interweavedness, something that binds you together, a purpose that you want to realize as a company, and don't think we're not changing the world or anything, but I didn't start my company to make a lot of money. I started it because I want to make an impact. I want to make it easier for people to work remotely together. And I think, especially in this world, that's something you can be proud of when you're at a birthday party and you can say, well, I mean, that's why I'm working at Enreach. And I think that part is extremely important when binding the new generation to your company. And they are not satisfied with just getting a great paycheck and maybe a great car, or maybe not nowadays, and having a lot of flexibility. In my experience, the great employees, the great talents, they also want to know, well, what are you doing to make the world a bit better?
Yeah. And do you see a shift also, Vicky, because of the more and more women in leadership positions in politics, in business? You see it all over the place. I mean, like in Scandinavia, I think 3 of the 4 countries with a female prime minister. You see more and more female CEOs. A lot of people still complaining it's not going fast enough. But what could be the impact long term of more and more women in leadership positions compared to 10, 20, 30 years ago? That's quite a shift as well. Or it doesn't matter.
No, I think it does matter, and I think it's not necessarily about the fact that you are seeing an increase in women, although to be honest with you, I'm quite glad about that because, I grew up in engineering and I spent the bulk of my career being the only woman in the room, and there are challenges.
Tech women were rare.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
But I think what it tells us is that this progression in increasing diversity is happening, and I think it's, yes, obviously I want to see more women represented, but what I'm really interested in is that we just have more diversity represented, and what I think that does is it drives empathy because you are exposed to more varieties of people, and therefore you understand more varieties of people, and therefore you're able to communicate with more varieties of people, and this kind of soft side of things is not necessarily about whether you're a female leader or a male leader. It's more about, have you been exposed to diversity, and do you understand how to communicate with diverse groups of people, and more importantly for me is, do you know how to include those people and make sure that they're able to bring their value and have a voice and be able to act in your organization in a way that's effective. So it's fantastic to see that diversity growing. We've got a long, long way to go. It's still, we're not there yet. But I think almost the more important piece is then thinking about, okay, but then how do we make our environments inclusive? And that is then about the soft skills. How do we make sure people can bring their whole self to work and really bring their skills and bring their values in a way that is seen and heard and valued?
Because I can imagine, Patrick, for an established company like yours, it's harder to make this change than, for example, a company of Stijn, for example, of other startups. They don't have a legacy, they don't have the tradition. I mean, you guys are also were already there in the old world in a way.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me that I'm very old.
Same here.
No, but I guess it's...
We're the 2 grey ones here.
No, it's and in our case, we have people in 20 locations in the world. Not being a gigantic company, it's about 350 people, but the cultural difference are something very important also. Again, and to come back on the leadership and the diversity, I guess for some people this type of leadership, empathetical leadership, is natural. And for them, it's nothing new. They just get to learn. For some other people who used to have people in the office next to them, watching on their seat how many hours and all of that, the old management style, I guess this is a revolution. Diversity is key because, again, if you want even to take that from an engineering point of view, a very Cartesian way, it helps you to grow your box. We always think about thinking out of the box. This is incredibly difficult. I mean, what you can do is to grow the box. And the more you have diversity from the gender, from the culture, from the country, from the type of... The more you can have different view, different, you can say, idea, different experience, and that grow your toolbox. And then you play with this toolbox to try to really help to do the stuff. So on our side, we have also a company which is made by acquisition. So you have the country culture, the company culture, and then you try to mix that into a new story. That's a challenge.
Can you attract young talent? What I hear from my children, they're looking, as you mentioned, also for purpose. And is a company in a way sexy or cool or woke or whatever it is? I mean, is it hard for you to attract new, 20-somethings
It's-
fresh out of
I mean,
college?
of course, we don't have the brand of Apple, of Google, of all
Yeah,
that,
of course.
But,
That's,
but it's
young
I mean,
kids like that.
I'm still, I love my job and I love the telecommunication industry. This is about telecommunication came from a pure communication into entertainment now. Thanks to telecommunication, thanks to connectivity, you move also on the entertainment stuff. So that helped to solve a lot of issue that's supposed to be a little bit green because we don't produce. I mean, except for the data center, which is not good, but for the rest, it's a clean industry. It helped people to get closer to each other. It get people to get the flexibility in this crisis where, from overnight, we all moved to home workers. And by the way, thanks to your work, our work, your work, we have a solution to propose. Is it the best one? Probably not. Is it the one that works? It's okay. So I guess if you are passionate for your work, I guess you can communicate this passion to people. A lot of companies can attract a lot of people. But if you do your job to make money, just to make money, just to make a career, just to make, there's less passion, and that I guess it's more difficult to convince the people. But if you are, when you recommend to some people to do the same job that you did about the media, about all of that, about meeting people, I'm sure you communicate that with passion. People really like to do that, and that's, I guess, there is probably more boring job than other one, but if you find what suits you, I guess a lot of jobs are very interesting.
Because how do you guys accommodate young people, young talent? You want to keep them in the company, but you don't want to keep them indefinitely because that's not the way they think and operate, right? But you do want to keep them at a certain point of time, want to attract new, fresh talent. What's the policy of IBM here?
Well, I think it comes back to what Patrick says, is if you really truly care about what you do, that shines through. And I think this is, what we do is we try to make it very, very clear what the purpose is. If you join us, this is who we are and this is what we do. And these are the kinds of projects that you can get involved in, and really trying to present that breadth of capability that we have in the box, and that breadth of, I'm always I get a bit passionate about this because I've got every technology that I can possibly imagine available to do things with, and I need to think about what things I want to do with that, but there's so much that you can do and so many fantastic projects. So I think that's a little bit the way that we look at this, which is, well, if you come and join us, you can find your purpose and you can find your way to really think about, who do I want to be in the world? And I think that's a really important point here, which is, not just about what do I want to do for a living, but who do I want to be in the world? And do I want to be someone who transforms the face of work and changes the way that people do what they do in this whole digital transformation story? Or, what is it that I want to bring to the world? And here is the way that I can do that, and the way that I can make changes and really have impact and on society, on businesses, on. So I think what we really do is to be very clear about, this is who we are, and this is what we would like you to be involved in, and step in and join us.
Yeah, then you're a much younger company, Stijn. Talk a little bit about your hiring policies. How do you make sure that you have the right people in the right place with the right talent and attitude?
Well, we've grown through new hires. We've also done some acquisitions.
Because you grew,
in all cases.
You've grown tremendously.
Yeah, we're almost
Yeah.
1,000 people now,
Yeah.
and that was a lot less some time ago. So, and a lot of it has gone through acquisitions as well, and all of it is around capturing that culture, that purpose basically, and we've articulated it quite well, and then being very ruthless at the entry point as well. Really, of course, assuming the right people apply, which is all about, I think, employer branding, but then being extremely open about what people can expect when they work for you, and being very transparent in that. And I
But
think
also strict, you said.
yeah, strict to check. Hey, is this the right DNA for my company? So we are a company. We have implemented distributed leadership, which basically means I'm the CEO, but I cannot tell anyone what to do. I can only set the general direction. I signed legal papers, basically prohibiting me from doing so. So we are running holacracy. So we've taken it a few steps further. This means if you come into our company, there is a safe environment, but it's not as safe as someone basically telling you every day what to do. You either jump into that Ferrari, as we say, and you go 200 kilometers per hour and you use everything at your disposal, or if you wait for something to happen, you will be waiting for a long time. So we try to make that very clear. We're looking for people who take the initiatives, who appreciate those opportunities, who want to reshape our organization, because our organization, the governance changes every day because of small little changes that come from the work floor. And if nobody can prove it causes harm, every idea we automatically say yes to. We have to. It's in our constitution. So
Give me an example. How do you actually accomplish a working atmosphere, a climate within your company where younger employees, older employees, where people really flourish? Because we've been talking about creativity. People said, the new way of working, it increases my productivity, decreases my creativity. How do you actually balance that out in order to make people at least, hopefully, more creative?
well, the best way to kill creativity is to kill ideas. And the best way to kill ideas is a couple of things. It's either one voice in a distributed team who is more articulate, who can speak louder or interrupt more, takes over, and even without realizing it, might squash creativity. Or, in my view, it's to democratize every idea. To say, let's 10 people here in a room, let's all agree on an idea. You get a diluted, weak idea.
Okay.
So I think if you keep from doing those two things, I think you're good.
Yeah. In closing, about a minute and a half left. So, starting with you, Patrick, the biggest challenge for leadership in the next couple of years when it comes to companies like yours? Biggest challenge in about 30 seconds.
I guess it's linked to what Suzy has said, is to know yourself, to know who you are as a company, and then to be able to either to continue those values or to change it, to evolve. But that's the best way to attract people, is to tell them who you are, because there is no magic company who is flexible, innovative, have the money to invest, allow you to grow, and have a good family, work-life balance, and all of that. So know who you are, you can explain who you are, the way you want to continue to evolve, and that the way people sign for what they know.
Vicky?
Yeah, and I think it's this a little bit, and to your point, it's letting go of that control and being more open to allow people to lead themselves and bring their own voice.
Interesting. Huge technological changes. Let go of control. That's an interesting concept here. Last word for you, Stan.
I couldn't agree more. The biggest challenge is to make myself completely dispensable, not needed at all. That's my ultimate goal. And I think it's the best goal for any role in any company. If you're no longer needed, you've created a great team, and there's sure going to be new challenges for you to fill. But for me, it becomes very boring doing the same thing a couple of years in a row. And I always work, when I see something repeating, I want to make sure that I'm no longer needed. That's the biggest challenge, especially remotely, in all honesty.
That approach was probably the biggest scare 25 years ago for the average manager.
Yeah, and sometimes in my team I see the same scare, but I've seen most managers adopt it quite well, actually.
Okay, terrific. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That concludes this segment. Back to the lobby. Terrific. Wonderful.
Thank you.